Well, uh, hello, and this is welcome to our last section of the 5.5% lesson. The last, not the last thing, but the second to last thing that I want to do with you is comparing percents to decimals and fractions. It's really good to understand that there's three different ways of talking about the same value. You can talk about it as a percent, you can talk about it as a fraction, or you can talk about it as a decimal. Um, just to let you know, we're going to be making a chart, and you need to have the percent symbol, fractions, and decimals. You're going to need quite a bit of room, so spread those out, and you're going to need at least 10 spaces, including the headings here. So the first thing I want to show you is 1%. Let's just put a line here. And the equivalent fraction for 1% is simply 1 over 100. The decimal equivalent to that, in the ones place, you'd have 0. In the tenths place, 0. And then 1/100th. So 1% is equivalent to 1 over 100, or 1/10. I'm sorry, 100th. Okay. Now, let's multiply 1% and let's talk about 8%. So we're going to increase that by 8, still in the ones, and we're going to write that as 8 over 100. But I want to remind you that we need to simplify this. So 8 and 100, I know that there's two numbers. 2 times 4 makes 8. So, and I know there's a 4 can be divided into 100. So I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 4. And I'm going to get 2 over 25. That is an equivalent fraction. For decimals, I can simply look at this fraction, 8 out of 100, and also think about multiplying 1% by 8, and I'll get 0.08. Let's move on to 10%. 10% would look like 10 over 100. But that can also be simplified. Notice you have a 0 on the top and on the bottom, and we can simply cancel those out, and you end up with 1 over 10. To convert this to a decimal, 10 out of 100 looks like this: 0 in the ones place and 10/100ths. Or it can look like this: 0.1. These two are equivalent. Okay. Now, let's multiply. We multiply the 1% by 8. Let's multiply the 10% by 8. We'd get 80%. That would be 80 over 100. And to fully simplify that, we're going to divide the top and the bottom by 20. And we get 4 out of 5. Looking at the decimal, if I go back to my fraction over 100, that's going to be 0.80 or 0.8. So this would be 80/100ths or 8/10ths. Those two are equivalent. All right, let's go on to our next power of 10 and talk about 100%. 100% of anything is all of it. Okay, so 100 out of 100, that could also be written as 1 whole. Over here in the decimal, when you have 100% or 1, you're just going to simply write it as 1.0 or simply 1. Okay, what if I multiplied 100% by 8 and I had 800%? Okay, so let's write that. 800% would be 800 over 100. 800 divided by 100 is 8. And so we would have 8 or 8. These are equivalent. And one more example. It's a little more complicated. We're going to say 888%. Well, that would be 888 out of 100. But another way we could write that would be converting this into a mixed number of 8 and 88 100ths. We could simplify this fraction and end up with 8 and 22 25ths. Okay, now thinking about these fractions, which one seems like it would translate to a decimal the best? I think this one, okay? Because I've got my 8 is my whole number, which looks like that right there. So that's 8. And 88 out of 100 is going to look like that. So that would be our decimal equivalent to 888% is 8.88, or 8 and 22 25ths, or 8 and 88 over 100. That's it for comparing percents to decimals and